How we doing, everybody? Old Papa G here, and in today's video I'm going to be going over an updated tier list for casters in Shadowlands, mainly focusing on Arena. I will bring up a couple things when it comes to BG terms, but for the majority of this video I'm going to be focusing strictly on Arena, 2v2s and 3v3s. There is a big difference between BGs and Arena. Some classes really shine in BGs, but they're subpar when it comes to Arena, so this is mainly focusing on Arena. A couple let's see, how many updates ago? Maybe like about 3 weeks ago, they had a really big update that nerfed a lot of classes, but some classes also got buffed. And it seems like some of the casters really stepped it up a notch in terms of damage, so we're going to go over all that. As you can see, if you're looking at the list right now, there is nothing in the C tier. It just jumps from D to B. The way it's going to be laid out is the closer you are to where it says tier, the better you are. So like the first spec on the list, in my opinion, I find to be the best spec out of everything in that tier list. So now you just have a little bit of an understanding of the way that it's set up. I'm not going to spend too much time on the D tier. Obviously, I'm going to show them and I'm going to go over them briefly, but I really want to focus on the better ones, so from B tier and up. And I'm also going to go over what I think, in my opinion, will be nerfed or buffed in the near future. And yeah, that being said, I just want to say I really appreciate everyone that's been supporting my channel. If you could like and sub to my page, I'd be very greatly appreciative. And now, all that being said, let's jump right into it, starting with the D tier. So, first up on our list, we have BM Hunter. It shouldn't really be a shock to anybody here. So, again, this is one of those why bother specs. Hasn't really seen too much play, and with a good reason. I am going to say, at least with the D tier, I personally haven't seen too many people playing it when I do Arena, or even BGs for that matter, so I don't really have too much information on it. But it just seems, for the most part, they do belong in the D tier until further notice. MM fits in this meta perfectly with high burst and good sustain damage. And even if MM really isn't your style as a hunter, survival is definitely the next best option. One of survival's big issues is pet concerns, and those issues are just as bad for BM, unfortunately. Pets take huge damage right now, even from AoE that's not even intended for them. Like if a paladin's doing Divine Storm, it's still going to get hit and do massive damage to the pet unintentionally. And BM is one of those specs that once it loses their pet, they really are just a sitting duck. It's unfortunate. They lose a majority of their abilities, and as of right now, which I do think at some point this is going to get changed, because I just think it's not fair. Res Pet is just a really long cast. I believe it's 4 seconds. The odds of you getting this off in an arena battle, especially in a 2v2 environment, is just slim to none. Unless you're on the lower rating, obviously, which you probably are if you're playing BM. BM, it does do decent damage, but nowhere near the burst of MM, and it doesn't have as good a sustained damage as Survival. It kind of just makes it a useless spec overall, and I really hate when Blizzard does this. They really should just not make it completely useless. It's just not right. It's just, unfortunately, it is what it is as of right now. So if you're a hunter, you have other things to choose, so don't feel too bad. You have other options. But as of right now, BM just isn't the way to go. So next up on our list, we have Demonology Warlock. Whoops, clicked the wrong one. Okay, Demonology Warlock. So again, this is kind of the same exact situation. Pretty much is the same as BM, unfortunately. Demonology pretty much is exactly the same as it was in BFA, which brings the same exact issues it has in BFA, because if you didn't play it, just so you know, it was just as bad, if not worse. Unreliable and really just not usable. Again, I actually feel like I see Demonology even less than I see BM Hunter, but when I do see it, I'm pretty much excited. I know that the match should be pretty easily won. Pretty much all of their damage is built into Demonic Tyrant, which that's actually a big problem, because this makes their damage more of a ramp style, and in this meta, that's really not ever how you want to play PvP, but especially in this meta right now, because it's all about burst. If you pop all your cooldowns, you should be able to blow up a target and eliminate it. With this, when you're trying to just ramp up your damage, it's just not, it doesn't fit into the meta right now. It's kind of useless. You know, PvP really needs instant big burst now more than ever. But again, kind of the same thing as BM. You have other good options, so you shouldn't really stress it too much. I know some people just really, really like their spec, but overall, as a class, Warlock is good. You have two other good options, and I wouldn't stress it too much. So now, obviously, there's nothing in the C tier, and we're going to jump right into the B tier. Now, first up, and it might come as a shock, is Frost Mage. So originally, when it came to Frost Mage, when in the beta and when Shadowlands first started, Frost Mage looked like it was going to be the mage to be. And I actually was kind of happy about that because, in BFA, Fire was king and Frost took a backseat. They were good. They just weren't as good as Fire, so I thought they were going to flip-flop it. And in the beginning, it seemed like it was going to stay like that because Ice Lance was just hitting insane, and they even buffed it after it was already hitting for insane damage. But now, as things have settled in, nerfs have come along, buffs have come along, Frost seems to be in the B tier. I do actually believe that out of everything, it's probably the most likely to be buffed. So that is at least a bonus. I really don't think it'll be in the B tier for long. I think as things settle in, it will go up. So yeah, Frost is more about slowing the pace of the game and having more control, which isn't what this meta is really about right now. It is good to have control of the field and the slows and everything, but you want the insane burst, which is kind of what Fire, well, it's not kind of, it's definitely what Fire brings. Good CC, though. You got a lot of slows, you have root effects, and of course you have polymorph, spammable, it's great. Also has solid damage, it's just not as strong as what it was once believed to be. It can be a little bit inconsistent, and when it comes to just big bursts right now, Fire is the way to go. And I also feel like in terms of big burst damage, even Arcane might be a little bit ahead of it right now. But as I said, I do believe that it will see a bump as, Shadowlands grows. So next up on our list, we have Destro Warlock. This might come as a shock to people. A lot in the beginning of beta and in the beginning of Shadowlands in general, people really didn't know where this was going to fall. They lost a lot of their borrowed power, but as things have turned out, they're definitely viable if you put them in the right situation. As of right now, I think Destro is the second best Warlock. It's definitely ahead of Demonology, I'll tell you that. But a lot of people are really making it work, and if they're paired with the proper support, they can definitely make a solid push. Chaos Bolt hits for insane damage right now. It really, really hits hard. It isn't as hard as it used to be in BFA, but it's still strong. Destro seems more situational, where Affliction is more effective in different scenarios and more matchups. They definitely pair with different teammates, so it wouldn't be the same. Like, whatever works with Affliction won't work with Destro, for the most part. Also, a lot of these specs and classes as a whole might get a heavy-handed nerf hammer, like soon, if not a little bit later. And in my opinion, I think Warlock is pretty much a safe bet. Whether it's Affliction or Destro, I think you're pretty much safe to go. And I think Chaos Bolt's damage is kind of going under the radar a bit right now. I know everyone knows that it's hitting hard, but in terms of what Blizzard's receiving, I don't think this is on their priority to nerf Chaos Bolt. It's more to nerf other things like, Convoke with balance and things along those natures, maybe Meteor on a Fire Mage, but I don't think they're going to nerf Chaos Bolt. I've seen it hit for 15 Ks against targets with 24% resilience. Not resilience, I'm sorry, versatility. I'm thinking old days. So, it might see an uptick as other classes get nerfed, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And next up, we got Arcane Mage, basically, Arcane Missile spam, boring. But I'll go over it. Yeah, so we got another mage in the B tier. This time, the Arcane Missile spammer. Arcane Mage has its damage and CC on the same school of magic. This is a huge issue. If they get kicked, they basically are just interrupted and they're pointless. They can't do anything. They still are the only mage, though, with Temporal Shield, which gives them a little bit more resilience, but I actually think that's not saving them too much. With how bursty the meta is, it's really just not enough to keep them alive for long. Does bring unique utility for mages with PvP talent, mass invisibility, giving your team stealth for 5 seconds, and since it's a PvP talent, obviously it works in arena and BGs. So it is a little different. It's nice, but as of right now, I think they're going to remain in the B tier. I think out of all the mages, if anyone's going to see an uptick, it'll definitely be Frost, and Arcane will probably sit there. But like I said, this is all just based upon my opinion, so who knows. Next, we're going to go right into the A tier, and we have Affliction, Warlock. So even though Affliction's in the A tier, I just want to say they are really good. So if you're in, you can make any of these work. From B tier up, you can make them work. You can make a strong push. A tier is definitely really viable. There, you should have no problem. I've seen plenty of Affliction Warlocks teamed up with the proper team and make really good pushes. Gladiators, really good. So I wouldn't really stress it too much just because you're in the A tier. I know people think like, oh, I got to be S tier. Like, no, the A tier can definitely be strong. So it doesn't have many comps it works well with, but the comps it does, they pack a really strong punch. Affliction deals insane amount of damage and usually tops the damage charts. Because of the spread, obviously with all their dots, especially in BGs, they really do deal a lot of damage. However, it's really not how the meta is. It comes from their dot spread, as I said, and pressure, which is consistent but just not bursty. That doesn't mean that they can't burst, but I'm saying the majority of their damage is from that, but they definitely can do a strong burst. Affliction locks have a ton of health and are kind of hard to hit. It depends. If playing Night Fae, Soul Shape, Demonic Circle, and Gateway make them so hard to catch sometimes, especially if they're going up against like a Ret Pally. They can make a Ret Pally's life miserable. And they really have, right now, as time's going on, and they get more and more gear, their health pools just keeps increasing and increasing. That's obviously going to make it harder and harder to kill them. I've seen some warlocks have almost 50k health already, and we're not even that's not even being at 226, 233 gear. So that's a lot of health. So obviously, the larger the health pool, the harder it's going to be to kill. Their main burst is solid and comes from Dark Souls, Summon Dark Glare, and Malefic Rapture. So they do have solid burst as well. Works best with other casters and dot users for additional pressure on the healer, makes it harder for them. Has a high skill cap, but are a great choice. And next, Marksman Hunter. Oh god, Marksman Hunter. Okay, so Marksman Hunters. Even with all the much needed nerfs to Marksman, they are still the best hunter by a wide margin in my opinion, especially when it comes to 3v3s. Survival I've seen a good amount in 2v2s, but when it comes to 3v3s, I pretty much only see Marksman. Burst damage is still massive and also has a solid sustain damage. Doesn't have too many comps it works with, but again, same thing as Afflictions. The ones it works with are really strong. You have Thug Cleave with Rogue, Windwalker Monk, or Feral. Hunters really shine with these three comps. They really perform well. I know this is mostly covering Arena, but it is worth mentioning. Marksman is one of the best specs for BGs. When they're in the back and you're just letting them hammer you, it's really a nightmare. They're really strong when it comes to that. When they are left open and pop out a camo, they can really create a lot of pressure and burn players down from afar, which really makes it difficult in certain situations for healers. I think Marksman is exactly where it needs to be right now. I don't see any future buffs or nerfs occurring for them for the rest of Season 1 at least, which is nice. You're going to be a solid choice, and I don't see anything wrong with that. You don't always need to be S tier. One of the strongest openers pretty much in the game, I think. When you pop out of camo, you pop True Shot, and even if you just let off 2 back-to-back aim shots and rapid fire, you're gonna really hurt someone, bring the pain, and you could drop someone if your teammate's doing it. I know before the nerf came around, and they were playing Thug Cleave with a Rogue, and even just in 2v2s with no healer, they would go in there and drop people before they were even getting off the mount. It was just insane. They also have kind of sneaky sustain. They have Aspect of the Turtle, Disengage with Post Haste for additional speed. And then you got Fiend Death, the legendary, removes the dots off of you. So you get out of a combat, you remove the dots. You could slip back into camo because you're not in combat. So these little things like that really make them versatile. And unlike the other hunters, which this is the most important part right now, they don't have to stress out about their pet. I feel like the other hunters, their main problem is having to worry about their pet. The only time Marksman really brings it out is for Roar or Sacrifice, or if they're going to do a quick CC like Web from a Spider, and then they just call it off, and then they get their buff again for not having a pet out. So because of that, that definitely brings them up a notch. So, we're finally done with everything up through the A tier, and now we're going to go over our S tier. This is, in my opinion, the 4 best caster specs in the game, and obviously it's all subject to change. I feel like some of these could use the nerf, but that being said, let's jump into it. So the first one on my list, in my opinion, is Elemental. It is in the S tier, but I do think it's the worst out of all the ones in the S tier. So first up, like I said, Shaman. It's a hybrid, which is really, if you're bringing a lot of bursts, you also want to be hybrid. That's kind of what this meta is really about. They use a lot of instant cast, and it's big burst, which is kind of important right now. If you're avoiding the kick and still do damage, that's really important. They have solid utility and off heals with their totems and Earth Shield. Their large burst comes off of Stormkeeper, and combining this with Echoing Shock, it deals insane damage. This makes their Lightning Bolt hits for huge crits without ever having the hard cast, really. Some of the utility brings to the table include Grounding Totem, Lightning Lasso, Pulverize, and Tremor Totem. Originally in the beta, they really were all about their Lava Burst. It was all or nothing, huge crit Lava Burst. And now, as things have changed, they're kind of more well-rounded and don't have to just live or die by that, which makes them better, in my opinion. So it's good to have more in your arsenal than just Lava Burst. So next up, we have Balance. So Balance Rue is one of those right now. I don't think it's going to get a nerf, but what I do think is going to happen with them is you're going to see Kyrian being the main choice, because Night Fae, it's a little bit more RNG, but when they do invoke and it procs a full moon, it's pretty much a one-hit KO, and I do think that's going to be nerfed, making Kyrian the preferred choice, which is kind of more, there's just no RNG. You know what you're getting out of it, and it's still kind of the preferred choice overall. It's not gimmicky, and it's really good for the 15% increased damage when you're about to burst. This is a fan favorite for me. I'm glad to see Balance in the top 3 for casters. Again, we have another hybrid here, and having probably either the best or the second best range DPS, I would say, as of right now. Their cooldown burst damage always needs to be looked out for. It needs to be respected. They can erase multiple targets, and it's when they do Celestial, so they could really burn people down, along with strong off heals on a limited resource. Make them one of the best in reality. There's just no way around it. I see a lot of people playing Balance now, probably more than ever. They also have solid CC with Mighty Bash or Mass Entanglement. I feel like in terms of threes, Mass Entanglement has been used more often. Obviously, you have Spammable Cyclone and Incapacitation while you're in Bear Form. Bear Form also brings the added durability to round them out nicely. They also have 2 types of high damage, single target and dot spread pressure. So it's really nice. And then one of the main things you choose, what is the second to last talent, is Twin Moon. So it kind of makes it easy to apply and spread. So as of right now, I definitely think they belong in the top 3, and their damage has to be respected. So next on our list, Shadow Priest. Everyone knew Shadow Priest was going to be in this list. They've, since the beta, from the beta they were the best. Now they're still in the S tier. They're in the top 3, and I don't really think it's gonna change as of right now, because Mind Games is just so good. Pretty much leading the pack, because in reality they just have the best hybrid capabilities. Excellent sustained damage, strong burst, insane off heals, and they have an impenetrable ability with Dispersion. They also have Greater Fade, which is just insane. It just makes it as well-rounded as you could really be right now. Not to mention its CC capability. I feel like as any caster's concerning, they have the best CC. They have a Fear, they have a Silence, they have a Stun, the big 3. Unfurling Darkness and Damnation. It's really easy dot, apply, and spread. It helps Shadow Priest quickly spread the dots, causing a lot of pressure and havoc for healers. It used to be Shadow Priest was kind of like a ramp style and castable dots. Thank God they got rid of that. That just wasn't right to them. This is the way they should have always been. Void Eruption along with Power Infusion give them a nice setup-based burst for explosion on targets. All this makes Shadow Priest definitely in the top 3. And that wasn't even me going over Mind Games, which is pretty much the best single target Covenant ability in the game in my opinion. So they have to be respected as well. And finally, the big dog, Fire Mage. They're back. Originally thought, especially in the beta or very early Shadowlands, they thought they were going to just be a mid pack with all the loss of their borrowed power. But as of right now, Fire Mage is back on top, best in the game in my opinion for casters. They're just so strong. They're in this list, or for the S tier, they're the only pure DPS, which just goes to show how good they really are to not be a hybrid and be the number one on this list. Good consistent damage, excellent burst off cooldown. They have 3 spell schools to CC with. Their damage spell schools is different from their CC. And this really makes them effective even when they're kicked. If they're kicked on fire, they can polymorph. On a fire ability, they can polymorph. If they're kicked on polymorph, they can damage. If they're kicked on fire, they can still do Ring of Frost. So they just have so many options. It's just not even fair what they can really do. This really makes them dangerous because they just always have an answer. No matter what you do to them, they really just have something to come back and answer with. Also, insane Pyroblast right now. It's doing probably the highest damage in the game for a casting ability. It's just not even fair. What I really recommend that you do if you play Fire Mage, or even if you don't, you should really check out Seadu's video going over Fire Mage. Yes, he is a healer. He's really, really good, but he does team up with the Fire Mage, and it just really goes to show what they're capable of. You know, they're surprisingly durable. You know, they have Prismatic Shield, which puts up all their shields at once. They also have an option when they Ice Block, they get all their health back with Ice Block, so that's another option they can choose. If they do Night Fae, which is their preferred option, they could go into the Cocoon when they're about to die. Right now, Combustion is dealing insane amount of damage when they pop that. Like, they're just a force. You really got to be careful for that. But just to briefly go over the Sea-Doo video, so what happens is, for the most part, this is what they do in their rotation. They're going to either polymorph a target, or their team's going to stun the target. They're going to follow this up with Radiant Spark, pop Combustion, and then do Meteor and Pyroblast. This does insane damage right now. It has to be nerfed. It's just not even right. When the Meteor hits, on average, it's hitting for 22 plus K. 22,000. It's just destroys people. And then that's followed up by a Pyroblast, a Greater Pyro, right from the Meteor hitting. And that's going to hit for another 20k. For the most part, unless you're a tank or a really, really high health Warlock, you're going to end that target. And that's just going to be the end of the game. And I just feel like that's a little bit too OP right now, and it needs to be nerfed. So, that being said, that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the content. If you did, I would always appreciate any sub to my channel. I'm going to be making more videos like this as things come along and change. I'll put in the description box my melee and my healer video. That way you could have all 3 of them. I'm also going to make one that kind of puts all of it together in one big video. And also, I'm going to be doing an RBG video. It seems like that's a very popular thing right now. I know there's not a lot of information on it, so I noticed that, and I will be making a video on it. And as always, thank you for tuning in.